You're listening to the Bored to Death Bingecast, talking TV shows and movies in easily digestible chunks. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and other assorted gender assignations. Welcome back to the Bored to Death Bingecast. I am Jay, and I'm being joined by
Sam.
And we're back to continue My Hero Academia Season 4. As we record this, it's several weeks after we've done our last binge, and we still haven't put up all of our binges because we've been doing WandaVision instead for our weekly releases. But, you know, none of that matters to you. When this goes up, they'll probably all be in sequence by then. But to refresh, we have just finished the Shie Hasaikai arc.
Yep.
With the raid on the Yakuza compound. Overhaul was defeated, and then the League of Villains are like, hey...
And demoralized after that.
Yeah, demoralized because the League of Villains just show up and they're like, hey, we're going to take your hands, and
we're going to take all of your power.
And we're going to take your power away from you, and we're going to take away the tech that you made, and we're going to get rich off of using it, and we're going to take down the hero society instead of you. So thanks!
Well, the thing is, they did get rid of one of his hands. One of them is still in a capsule.
Except, well, yes, it's still in a capsule, but, you know, that's a good point.
Could Overhaul's hand still be usable?
It depends on what sort of powers All for One still has.
If they have a big chunk of DNA, they could actually extract the...
Exactly. If they can figure out a way to extract a quirk using science instead of quirks, then... Well, and to an extent, they have. That's exactly what the Shie Hasaikai did. With the quirk suppression stuff and the rewind bullets, or rewind serum.
So the tech's out there.
Yep. But... one thing to bear in mind is we don't know if that tech necessarily survived what happened in the Yakuza compound. Because there was a lot of collateral damage. Partly because of Mimic just warping everything. And then Overhaul just tearing everything apart.
Especially after they pissed him off real good.
Yeah. And he went one-winged angel.
It's like, you're all gonna die. Bye, everyone.
Yep. But in the aftermath of all that, Mirio lost his powers because he got hit with the quirk removal bullet. And there's still some hope that when Eri gets control over her powers, that she might be able to rewind it back so that he can get his powers restored. But she doesn't really have control over her abilities.
Yeah.
You know, which is understandable. She's a traumatized little girl.
That has been theoretically killed and reconstructed over and over again.
We don't know that she was necessarily killed. They brought her to the brink of death, and then Overhaul used his abilities to basically put her back together. But it wasn't pleasant, whatever they did to her. Because, you know, she had bandages all over her, and she was terrified of them. And she had, you know, I got the impression there was some Stockholm Syndrome stuff going on there because of everything. You know, because she still reacted badly to him getting hurt in some way, or just like she was sort of freaking out that he was getting hurt
because she knew what his powers could do to someone. The whole reason why she kept going back to him was because she didn't want anyone else hurt.
Yep.
Probably somebody was taking care of her, or Overhaul found him and he was the one that killed her parents because...
And Sir Night Eyes was killed in the midst of all of that.
Yep.
Well, mortally wounded and then later died in the hospital. But there was the impression that he used his quirk in his final moments and saw that there was hope for the future, sort of thing. That while All Might...
Or he was just bullshitting.
Also possible, but we'll never know.
Yeah. Because
he's dead.
We can ask him.
Is there somebody that has a quirk that allows him to talk to the dead?
Not as far as I know.
It's only a matter of time. There probably is somebody out there with that sort of ability because they've put in just about every other kind of superpower.
I don't know. They haven't really mentioned a whole lot about the dead. There was nothing spiritual.
I guarantee you somebody has probably written that fan fiction where there's some sort of villain that has the ability to resurrect the dead, but it's like zombies, like Black Lantern shit.
Huh.
But yeah, so now we've got an episode coming up where apparently the provisional licensing license training stuff, which is Bakugo and Shoto and a few of the others, still going through the process of getting their provisional license, so they can actually use their quirks in the defense of people.
Yep.
And they've got to now work on being friendly and for the kids,
For the children.
For the children. Because this next episode 79, is called "Win Those Kids' Hearts." So yeah, that's where we are right now. And I'm still, I still do enjoy this series. And I just like the world building that they've done. They don't try to beat you over the head with all of it, but when they fill in details of how the society works, it's introduced.
It feels natural.
It feels natural the way it comes across in the story.
They don't ham fist too much at
Yeah.
you, and if it is, it doesn't really feel preachy either.
No.
When it comes to certain subjects,
it comes across as sort of like, this is how, if the Marvel or the DC universe with any sort of power registration things were to go on in a more level-headed
this is
manner.
after Civil War.
Yeah.
If it went the other way for superhero registration.
Yeah, and Tony Stark didn't decide to go like full fascist sort of thing with it. But yeah, so it's an interesting world that they've constructed, and I think part of it, I think, is the fact that like 80% of the world has quirks.
That too.
Whereas in like the Marvel, and Marvel and DC universe,
it's the 20%.
It's the other way around. So where the powered people are the ones in the minority, sort of thing. But
for now.
Well, yeah, and I recall their before House of M, it's like the tick up. It was ticking upward in terms of number of mutations coming along. Not all of them were necessarily like world-breaking power, but there were more and more mutations manifesting like that. And then House of M happened, and suddenly the number of mutants was drastically reduced, and they're not being born as
drastic go down.
Mm-hmm. And what was the name of those that like mini-series? There was some mini-series that showed like a potential future of the Marvel universe where like practically everyone had powers. It's like it had just sort of exploded, and even people that didn't have powers previously now had some sort of mutation.
Weird.
I can't remember what it was now. At any rate, but yeah, My Hero Academia, so we'll be jumping in for another 5-episode binge, so we'll be back after the binge.
While the binge is happening, thanks for listening to our podcast. Please give us a like and subscribe and spread the word. You can reach us on social media on Facebook or Twitter at BTD_Bingecast. The Bored to Death Clan is part of the CKCC Radio podcast family, including J Bunny's Music Hub, the Race Nerd Podcast, Real Paranormal Talk, Ranking Tracks, Motivational Moves, Girls Who Like, and The Nerd Table. Please consider supporting CKCC Radio on Patreon. And now, the binge is done, so let's get to the discussion.
And we're back. So, definitely going into like fallout of the Shia Hisaikai arc, and now we're going into the school festival arc.
With a mini arc inside the arc.
With a little mini arc inside the arc with Gentle Criminal, but we'll get to him in a little bit. It's just because I kind of want to hold off on saying anything about Gentle Criminal until later, but there's a lot to... There are some things I made a note of in here, because the first 2 episodes that we binged today dealt with the remedial students for the provisional licensing.
Oh yeah,
trying to win the hearts and minds of the bratty elementary school kids, grade school kids, basically.
Unruly as it is.
Well, and it's because they've got pretty strong quirks for their age. They basically feel like, we don't need to listen to you. You know, typical sort of thing, you know? If somebody thinks that they know better, they're not going to listen to the people that actually do.
Oh, coincidental that Bakugo's in that training, and it's just like a whole class of Bakugos.
Right? Although I got the impression that Bakugo didn't really so much misbehave in class, really, as he was just an obnoxious jerk to everyone.
Yep.
And so, but they, so the four students in that class that the remedial class that we really focused on were Bakugo, Shoto, Whirlwind, I can't remember his name.
Damn, I forgot. I had it.
And Kami. And we now know this is the actual Kami, because she was using her quirk. And the reason she's in the remedial class is because, well, she basically like slept for 4 days because the League of Villains had drugged her when Toga impersonated her for the provisional licensing exam. And she's like a sweet little ditz. But
dropping all sorts of
pseudo innuendos.
No, just a bunch of slang.
Oh, slang. Oh, yeah, the slang stuff. Yeah. There's no innuendos. That's Midnight more than anything, or Mineta. But Mineta is so blatant about it that you could hardly call it an innuendo. But yeah, she's just sort of like throwing out the yo and totes and cray cray and things like that.
Every single one of those.
And so like, but the bratty kids are just like completely. Oh, and I gotta talk about Gang Orca for a second. Just him being Drill Sergeant Nasty to them, like asking the four of them questions, or three of them, not Kami so much, but asking the three of them questions, and when they answer, he's like, wrong! And
he was yelling at all the remedial students, and they were the only ones to pipe up.
Yeah, and then he labeled them fish turds. But he while all of them were sort of put in charge of winning the hearts and minds of the kids, it was those four with Kami. You know,
the other ones were supposed to do just regular.
Oh,
classes.
It was those four
because they have problems. Well,
three of them had problems
with working together.
Mm-hmm. And especially because Bakugo is just like his behavior, full stop, needed a lot of work. And
well, they put Kami in there because they haven't seen.
They haven't really seen much of what she can do at all.
That, and they need to have a female in the group to balance things out.
Yep. And those kids, they didn't want to listen to anything that was going on, and like they all showed off. They do have some pretty strong quirks, and that's when Meatball, whose name again I can't remember, the one with the meatball quirk from Whirlwind's school,
Shiketsu.
Yeah, Shiketsu talked about how this is something that has been noticed, that as quirks are interact with one another, and with people getting married and passing quirks on, and they combine and create stronger quirks. Sometimes mutate. It's he talked about something called quirk singularity doomsday. I mean, you've sort of got one of those wrap all in one person with All for One. And but it's a fairly good point, and it's one of those ones that, I mean, we were sort of talking about Marvel and stuff in the intro to this Bingecast, but as as people with powers, get married or have kids together, those kids will sometimes get combinations of their powers that become stronger than the original in a lot of respects.
Well, that, and early on with a lot of things, untamed, untapped, or controlled power.
Right. It reminds me, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Sky High.
Nope.
It was dealt with kids with superpowers going to school to be trained how to become like superheroes and stuff. And the main character was the son of two superheroes. the commander, and I forget what his mother was called, but it's like his mother had the ability to fly. His father was basically like super strong, but he doesn't have any powers. But he basically gets into the school because of his parentage, but because he's not able to demonstrate his powers when going through like orientation, he gets shunted to the sidekick course. But partway through the movie, he does develop his strength power. But during the movie, it's sort of talked about how when two superpowered individuals have a kid together, the kid could develop either one's powers or both. But it's mentioned that it's super rare. Guess what happens by the end of the movie?
You got some both?
Yep.
Whoa. Shocker of all shockers.
Shocker of all shockers. But really, it's by the end of the main gist of the movie is getting the sort of like the misfit kids that are all in the sidekick course because their powers aren't considered strong enough to become full-fledged heroes. They end up having to help save the day.
Well, of course.
Of course. But it's this
Wasn't that
quirk singularity doomsday thing is sort of what I'm thinking of here. But by the end of that 2-episode arc, they do manage to get the bratty kids who were getting ready to throw down with them.
They were throwing down with them.
Well, yeah, that's true. Like the kids start throwing their powers at them.
Well, don't forget the nicknames they were giving them all. Like called Kami a Floozy and
Floozy.
Todoroki 5 Weenies.
5 Weenies because he had these like little like first aid kits on his.
He was trying to teach. It's like no,
trying to teach him what it was, and they're like, nah, it looks like a wiener.
I have 5 Weenies.
And I can't remember what they were calling Bakugo or Whirlwind.
Well, they called Whirlwind Gorilla.
That's right, because he was big.
Just a big guy.
Yeah, he's just a big dude. The bulky clothes he's wearing doesn't really help. Because when he's not in his hero outfit like that, he doesn't look nearly as huge as he normally does.
Because he has a whole bunch of like windpipes and stuff on him to help him like control different aspects
to
of the
redirect his wind powers. But when the kids start throwing down with them, thinking that they're going to intimidate them like they've done to their teacher that poor woman who's like crying like all the time.
Yeah, the entire episodes she was in tears.
And basically any other adult that tries to tell them what to do, they show off these powers, and Team Fish Turd basically just doesn't even blink an eye. They're just sort of like, they're thinking to themselves, we've gone up against actual villains. This isn't anything. And they basically work together to sort of combine their quirks and
with all the stuff that they were throwing
at them, and Todoroki used his ice powers to basically make like a big slide network thing, using their like hoops and everything as structure, because he says I don't have fine control to make complex structures yet. And Whirlwind used his powers to like sweep them up in the air to the top, and so they could then come down.
Kami made it
Aurora Borealis.
Well, we didn't really talk about her powers. Glamour.
Yeah, she can basically make illusions.
And from what I'm hearing, the next update in Destiny, she's going to be in it. You're going to get Glamour.
You're confusing glamour with glimmer?
No.
Glamour?
Yeah, you're going to be able to glamour your armor.
Oh, you're talking about the transmog stuff. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be dropping. Well, that doesn't matter for this podcast. I could talk for hours about Destiny, but that's not what this podcast is about.
I just felt like sidetracking you for a second.
Yeah, you know how to do that. But yeah, the kids start having a good time, and basically they're teaching them. It's like you don't have to be a jerk like this kind of thing. They had tried to talk to the kids, but the kids just weren't interested in listening.
Oh no, they're adults to them.
Yep. And while this was all going on, Endeavor and All Might were there to watch, and Endeavor took the opportunity to talk to All Might about being the number one hero, because with All Might's retirement, it's like everyone's sort of looking at Endeavor as the new number one hero by default, but he's like, how did you become the symbol of peace? How do you handle that sort of thing?
Like, what does it mean to you? Like, how do I get there? Like, I wanted to forge my own path, but every time I looked up, you were so much further ahead of me, kind of thing.
And All Might basically does try to give him some advice over it. It looked like Endeavor was trying to take it to heart, because at the end of the episode, I should mention also Whirlwind and Shoto. Well, Whirlwind is warming up to Shoto a whole lot.
He tries his damnedest not to have any enemies. If you noticed, he wants to be friendly, and
he wants to be friends with everyone.
But I think it's great.
Yeah, but you have to remember, when he first saw Shoto, or when we first saw him meeting Shoto, he was very cold to him, and it turns out that's because of a couple of bad first impressions he got from both Endeavor and Shoto. When he was a kid, he tried to get Endeavor's autograph, and Endeavor just sort of swatted it away.
It said, get out of my way. Well, my thing is, they didn't really show the full scene. Like, what if he was after another villain? What if he was still trying to save somebody?
Right.
Sure, kids don't really have that.
They do have a lot of tunnel vision about stuff.
Yeah, they don't have a whole view on the
But
situation.
also, when Whirlwind met Shoto,
he said the same thing.
It was basically the same thing, and so he assumed that Shoto was just like his father.
Because I think he beat him in some kind of a race.
Yeah, it was at the provisional licensing. No, it wasn't.
Wow, good job.
It was the UA entrance exam.
Yeah.
And
trying to get out on recommendations or something.
Mm-hmm. And so, but he's now trying after he realized that Shoto's not like his father, and actually really regretted the bad first impression that he gave him. He's warmed up to him and is trying to be more friendly. Shoto's still kind of like, okay.
So you don't have to try so hard to be friends with me. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to do it because I don't want to have any bad blood anymore.
Right.
Because he noticed how poorly it affected him when he was trying to be a hero.
And Endeavor, after the whole provisional licensing class thing was over, Endeavor went up to Shoto to basically compliment him on how well he did, and he was trying to be more personable about it. He was trying not to be as much of a jerk as
he's like, I'm going to try my best to, like, you're making me proud. I'm going to try my best to make you proud of me as a father. Yeah. So he wanted to try his best. And, like, Shoto's like kind of hesitant. He's like, "You're not my dad. What are you doing?"
No, Shoto's like, well, no, he is his dad, but it's just sort of like, you being nice to me now is not going to make up for years of abuse at your hands. But it seemed like he was like, you're putting in the effort though, so I'm not going to,
Like, I appreciate the effort.
I appreciate the effort, but we're not okay yet.
Yeah.
And even Whirlwind seemed to have noticed that.
Punched himself
in the face like, am I dreaming? Wham!
No, I think it was more like getting the hatred out of him.
Yeah, just sort of like, I gotta punch it. He goes up to Endeavor to basically, say hello or, greet him or whatever.
Punching out his best judgment.
Yeah, and Endeavor's just like, thank you, and you're bleeding, by the way. But that whole thing with Endeavor and the symbol of peace thing, Endeavor, by default right now, is the number one hero. Mm-hmm. He's not the symbol of peace, though, because he's just not wired to be the same sort of all-loving hero that All Might is. And I do wonder what that is going to be affecting the Hero Society and everything, as well as All Might's retirement. It's like your new number one hero is this abrasive jerk. That's gonna affect things, and obviously there's Deku is seen as the guy that's going to inherit the mantle of the symbol of peace when he gets to that point, but still
he's far off.
He's still not there yet. And then we had the brief little thing with Aoyama, Because we had a little time passes montage. They had Night Eye's funeral. The work studies were put on hold because of everything that happened with the Shie Hasaikai and everything. And Aoyama basically came up to Deku just shoving cheese in his mouth, and is being like all
mid-sentence,
mid-sentence thing, and he's just sort of winking at him, and then he like creeps up to Deku's bedroom window and leaves some more cheese outside.
Because we gotta mention they share a balcony.
That's right. And Aoyama, left some cheese on his balcony, but he'd arranged the cheese to read, "I know," and it just freaked Deku the fuck out.
No.
He's like, "What does he know?" Yeah. And so, but he got the opportunity to go talk to Aoyama during their next gym class, and Aoyama basically says, "I know that your quirk isn't compatible with your body," and admits that his quirk isn't compatible with his body either. That he's had to wear that belt,
naval laser belt,
to contain his naval laser since he was a little boy, because otherwise it leaks out. And
so I kind of compare it to Cyclops' beams.
Yeah, although in Cyclops' case there was some brain damage or something. I thought
really?
that caused it.
I didn't know.
Him and his brother Havoc, I think they both had something happen to them that makes it so they have to wear something that keeps their powers in check. Like Havoc wears a harness or something.
Yeah, he wears that. I thought it was always an amplifier for some reason.
Well, I think he's adjusted it so he can amplify his powers through it, but he needs to wear it to contain it otherwise. Just like with Cyclops, he needs to wear the ruby quartz glasses all the time to prevent his eye beams from just going crazy. But Aoyama, was doing the whole trying to give him cheese and everything to try to lift Deku's spirits.
And all in fashion of all of it being creepy, all of it having the undertone of music.
Yeah, it was very sort of creepy stalkerish, but it turns out no, he was just trying to be friends. But then we got into the school festival arc. They're doing we're doing another festival, but whereas the sports festival is more a chance for the hero course to show off.
To show off their moves.
To show off their
to
moves
go
and
for
everything.
agency.
The school festival is a chance for all the other classes to do the same.
More of the support class, more of the
support class, the general studies and business.
Yeah.
And Aizawa, Mr. Aizawa basically tells them, you've got to make up your minds what your class is going to do. And while they have a brainstorming session, they're not able to decide. It was a great little brainstorming session. It's all these food suggestions and everything, or experiences like the maid cafe and
That's not really an experience.
It is.
The maid cafe itself is an experience, not having previous experiences
right.
being able to cook.
And while they weren't able to make a decision, Aizawa basically tells them, either you come up with something by tomorrow, or we're going to go with my idea, which is a general lecture. And they're like, you mean just a class? And what they end up settling on, they discard all the food suggestions because everybody at UA is used to getting lunch rushes food, and it's gourmet. So all that stuff is out. And while they were talking about all this, everybody was suggesting various things that were usually related to various hobbies that they had. Sugar Rush suggested a creamery or
crepes.
Crepes, that's what it was. And that's because he cooks sweets and stuff in his spare time.
Yeah.
And everyone points out that's because it's a hobby that comes in handy for him
for his quirk
because of his quirk, and that's a general thing. Everyone also pointed out that Jiro does a lot of stuff related to music in her spare time. She's got a freaking studio in her dorm room.
But she's that's literally my hobby. It does nothing for my quirk.
And she's real shy when they basically suggest doing a concert, and which is what they end up settling on. But she's it came across a whole lot I'm not sure if it's so much stage fright or performance anxiety as much as like this is a hobby, this is a thing I do for me, I don't really want it to be public kind of thing. That is how some people view.
She's still really a shy person in general.
But she did agree to help put together the performance and everything. They settled on like a rock/rave club scene kind of thing. And in the midst of all this, Aerie has woken up from her coma, essentially, after the events in the CKCC thing. And her horn has shrunk back down to a nub, because they realize that her horn's growth is related to how much power she has to throw around with her quirk. So if it's down to a nub, then it's more in control. And they finally allow her some visitors after she requests, specifically Mirio and Deku, because she remembers the two of them from what happened. And when they meet with her, she's still like racked with guilt, partly because of what Overhaul had basically done to her with his emotional abuse.
Yeah, and then they also the loss of Mario's power.
Mm-hmm. And they're both real quick to assure her, we don't blame you for that. It's not your fault. And they're like, everyone there was there to try to help. You so that we could see you smile. And she then like pulls at her cheeks, trying to pull it into a smile. It's like she's like, I don't really know what it feels like to smile anymore. And I'm just like, oh, you poor girl. But then Deku gets the idea of, why don't we take her to the school festival? And so he asks Mr. Aizawa about it. Aizawa's like, I'll have to talk to the principal, but I don't see why we couldn't. And the principal eventually does say yes, but as a little thing that gets thrown in there, the principal is also approached by the police, and they're like, you should cancel the festival, because UA has been targeted every time they have one of these. They have
any kind of grouping of the kids.
Of the kids, with the first attack by the League of Villains at the...
That was only Class 1A.
Yes, but... and then the summer camp. It's just like they pointed out, and the police aren't entirely wrong with this. It's just sort of like, it's too great a risk that the villains will, or somebody will look at it as an opportunity. And the principal's just like, we need to do the festival anyway, so that things don't look so grim for the future.
Yeah. If they didn't have anything to take their mind off of all the bad stuff that's been happening around, the loss of the number one hero, the death of others, the complete destruction of certain areas,
the retirement of All Might and everything, it's like they need this. And even the Class 1A students were like, we kind of need to do this to try to keep everyone's spirits up, and to try to, because right now they're all forced to live in dorms like we are because of what happened to us. And Bakugo saw like those general studies students.
They were like looking right at him,
glaring like directly at them and talking about that they're trying to put on a concert, like that's going to make it okay. What happened? How arrogant are they? Sort of thing. There's a lot of bad feelings going on there. But they still work on getting everyone together to make the concert. They split everyone into like 3 teams: the band, the effects team, and the dance team. And the effects team we're going to have like Shoto, make a bunch of ice, Kirishima just like smashing it into like a mist or like particles into the air, and Aoyama being a living disco ball. And he's like, this is what I was born for. And Sero, I think, was going to use his tape to do like streamer sort of thing. As for the band, Jiro was going to be bass guitar.
I thought she was going to be lead guitar.
No, she said she was going to be bass guitar. Bakugo turns out to be really good on drums, so he's going to do drums.
Go figure, it's the angsty.
We're going to murder them with music! They got Momo to do the keyboards, and they got like 2 people, I think, to do like regular guitar, because they got Dark Shadow, whose name I can never remember. He turns out to be really good on guitar, and what's his name? The lightning guy.
Yeah, I keep having the names and they just come.
Yeah, same.
My brain.
But he also turns out to be pretty decent on guitar, also. So they've got 3 guitarists. You know, a bass
Kaminari.
guitar.
It's not Kaminari. He's the one that's. He's the.
Yay!
Is it Kaminari?
Yeah, that's him.
Okay.
We saw him when he was in like the math class.
His brain
Being
was
taught by,
short.
he was like shorting out his brain. He's like 2 plus 1 equals yay. And then they also decided that Jiro was going to do vocals also, because they needed somebody to do the singing, and everyone else that tried is just sort of like, that's just yelling. You're off key.
Manette was just screaming.
It was just, yeah. And, well, Kirishima no, it wasn't Kirishima. Who was it? Might have been Kirishima? Whoever the one that sounded more like a lounge singer, like on a cruise ship.
Kaminari.
Might have been, yeah, it might have been Kaminari. But regardless, it was Jiro that ended up getting tapped for that, and everyone else was going to be doing like dancing, and Pinky was sort of
Dance instructor.
Yeah, was being the dance instructor, because we saw her doing like break dancing at the beginning of the whole arc, and Deku was just sort of like, hey, that's
because it's incorporate. It's good.
He wants to learn it as well, because it'll come in handy with his shoot style. But later in the whole thing,
think about it, he could like go upside down and spin and make tornadoes.
Mm-hmm.
Tornado kicks.
Yep. Especially because that was the other thing. All Might started teaching him how to weaponize the wind pressure from his quirk, and because when Deku like channeled like 20% at full cowling and like delivered a kick, it like blew a huge furrow through the forest around UA, and that's when All Might was just sort of like teaching, was going to start teaching this. Deku realized, you've been holding back like all the time, because if I'm doing this with like basic moves at 20%, that he realized if All Might had been going at 100% with everything,
destroying
he would have just destroyed like the entire city with just like swinging his arm. And so Deku was working on learning the precision, because he mentioned like long range attacks was where he was weakest. And he basically learned, he's practicing like flicking his finger, like we'd seen him do previously. Yeah. But now trying to like do it with more precision to like hit like one tree rather than the whole forest.
Also, it looked like he broke his middle finger on.
Well, no, I think he just sort of strained the muscle. Like All Might sort of like, that's going to leave a nasty bruise, and he put like some ice on it. I don't think it was a full break, but he's working on it. But he's still not anywhere close to 100% without some sort of artificial or external boost.
We also found out that All Might
had been using like a support device once.
He had a support device, and then Deku freaked out because he's like,
I didn't know about
this.
this.
I'm a super fan, and I don't know this shit.
But in the midst of all this, we also have been introduced to the new little arc villain, or at least for the school festival arc, Gentle Criminal, who's basically making like YouTube videos of him pulling off these crimes, but he's sort of an anti-hero in doing it. He's trying to expose things, like we see him rob a convenience store, and that convenience store, we later find out, had been like falsifying the expiration dates on some of the perishables that they sold, and he was trying to rob them to sort of expose it. Just but it's more like you're robbing the place and not mentioning this sort of thing at all.
I think he was just trying to bring attention to the place, so if they're searching it, they see his thing, and then they search the store, then they'll find possibly the article about it.
At the same time, you kind of need to sort of do more to draw the eye to the specific thing you're trying to call people's attention to.
Yeah, you can't do Robin Hood without showing it.
Yep.
Not to mention, they also cut out anything that shows anything about his quirk.
Yep. We still don't know what his quirk is. I suspect it has something to do with tea. Because...
Like how?
Well, we see him, pouring tea a whole lot. It's very important to him, his tea. But when he decides he's going to target the UA school festival, it seems like he's primarily doing it to try to penetrate their security and show that they're not as secure as they like to claim they are.
Yeah, but what kind of problems is that going to cause for Aerie and the kids?
Exactly.
If he even gets close.
Mm-hmm. But it's because of that. But as he's explaining to his little sidekick LaBrava, the Harley Quinn to his Joker, because he has the showmanship of everything that he's doing has a real Joker sort of vibe to it. He may not be as whacked out in the head as Joker is, but you can't deny there's a touch of him in the character. But as he's explaining to LaBrava what the plan is on the day, it's like, we're going to take this route because we're less likely to run into any heroes this way. He points out a specific building next to a hardware store, which is a cafe. A small cafe run by an old man. It only has a few regulars, but he specifically says this is the only place in town that sells Gold Tips Imperial tea, which had just been shown off earlier in the episode as a tea that Momo was brewing that her parents had gotten her. And
Rich parents.
Yep, and the fact that he was specifying the tea like that is not something you just throw out there unless Gold Tips Imperial is an actual tea brand or something in Japan, and this was a particularly ham-fisted sponsorship thing. But you don't point out something like that without it being meaningful.
Could just be a really good tea.
But I'm remembering in the provisional licensing exam, wasn't there a hyper intelligent student from one of the other schools who, based on what tea she was drinking, it gave her certain advantages with her quirk.
Kind of like it was her intelligence, her hyper analytics.
Yeah, and it's depending on the kind of tea she had, it allowed her to focus in on specific things.
Yep, that was her.
Yeah, it was like an all-girls school, or her little group was all girls.
I think it was an all-girls school.
Okay. Well, I'm just remembering that, just sort of we've seen that, depending on what you eat, kind of thing, or consume, it could give you different advantages. Like we saw that with Manifest. What's his name? Sun Eater, yeah. Depending on what he eats and consumes, he can then manifest those abilities. And of course with Sugar Rush's quirk, the more he gets strength from what he eats. Fat Gum, it's less what he eats so much as that he has to eat a whole bunch to pack on the calories that he then stores.
She's gotta
keep her lipids up and everything. So yeah, it's the fact that he's focused so much on tea, there's got to be a reason for it.
What do you think it does?
I'm not sure yet, because we haven't seen anything related to his quirk.
That's the whole point. We're
Exactly.
trying to figure it out.
There's not really anything that we've seen as any sort of clue.
When he was walking away in his first video we saw him in. That's the only thing I can give you as a hint.
I'm still just not really sure. I don't really remember very well.
Because it makes sense to me since I've already known.
Yeah, and you're being deliberately obtuse and teasing about knowing what's going on.
Possibly.
And more in all of this, we've also seen, and you've talked about this before as well, that it really frustrates you because you're like, I don't want to like him. Stop making Bakugo more likable.
He's starting to.
His character growth is very impressive.
They're doing a lot of character growth over a bunch of different characters.
Mm-hmm. Like when he reached out to the bratty like smart kid,
literally telling him that's why I have a problem because
it's like
I hold myself higher than others.
It's like when you look down on everyone, you can't see your own weaknesses. And the kid sort of looked at him and realized this guy is talking to me as an equal, not looking down on me because I'm a kid, but also sort of like he nailed it.
That he really meant it too. That was the other thing.
And he's been doing other stuff also, like trying to, encourage some of the other students in 1A and not being just sort of like, you gotta get on my level, nerd. I mean, he's still doing that to some extent with Deku, but that's because he sees Deku as the actual rival.
Well, he did say, I'm gonna beat you, but don't let me beat you.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
It's just sort of like, I'm going to beat you, but you better not hold anything back. I don't want
to hear any excuses.
Mm-hmm. It's like when he showed off his drumming things, and his drumming skills, and everyone's just like, we want you to do this. He points out that all the other classes in the school hate them already, and us putting on this concert isn't going to make them immediately like us. But he's like, that's why we're going to murder them with music. Deku, you're a jerk, but you're our jerk.
Deku?
Not Deku, Bakugo. God.
If anything, he's like the sweetest damn character in there.
Yeah, Deku is like I said, he's said earlier, he's gonna be the new symbol of peace once he gets to the right level. But there was a thing during the gentle videos. We saw his first video where he talked about
the big villains.
He talked about other villains. He mentioned All for One, and he mentioned Destro, who was the head of the Meta Liberation Front, I think is what he called it. And there was another one, some sort of thief, but I couldn't catch his name.
Meta Liberation. Huh. Magneto?
No, that's the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
I know, but it's to liberate the mutants and show them they have the power to rise up.
Yep, but it's the fact that they name dropped a couple of other villains like that we haven't seen yet. That's gonna be significant.
But how soon will it be?
Yeah, that's the only thing. I doubt it's gonna be in this season, but they're laying the groundwork for next season. It's got to be because there's only a handful of episodes here, and you don't name drop somebody from a group called the Meta Liberation Front, and sort of mention him in the same breath as All for One, and not have him be a villain that you beat in a handful of episodes.
You got to beat him in one episode.
Well, no, you build up to it. All for One, they dropped hints at him.
Destro, really? We really going G.I. Joe with it?
I mean. But, yeah, there's still more going on here. There's, things are still looking a little grim because, the League of Villains are still out there making plans. They name-dropped another villain group in the Meta Liberation Front. And the fact that there are still people that are looking at UA and being like, you're the problem, I'm going to target you.
Right.
Yep.
Because that's where all the big names come from.
Mm-hmm. It's when you're number one, you've got a target on your back. That's how it goes.
Yeah, because no one's in front of you.
Unless you're in the world of Afro Samurai, in which case, if you're number two, you've got a target on your back. Because of how things worked in that setting. It's like only the person with the number 2 headband can challenge the one with the number 1 headband. But at any rate, I need to go back and watch that again. It's been years and I don't remember it too well, but I remember that aspect of it. It's why everyone kept going after Afro because he had the number 2 headband, and everyone wanted it so they could challenge. I can't remember his name. Justice. That was the name of the guy, the gunslinger that took the number 1 headband from Afro's dad.
Oh.
Justice was voiced by Ron Perlman too, which made it awesome. But yeah, so we're school festival, trying to keep things upbeat, but there's still bad stuff going on.
Yeah, a lot of it.
President Mike is still awesome in his role. Like, he got bored just watching them try to play around with the kids, and came down to commentate.
Commentating on 4 high school students trying to
babysit a bunch of grade schoolers,
win those children's hearts.
And it just made me I think I commented on this while we were watching. It's just like him trying to commentate on the school festival, especially with 1B's play that they're going to put on, the weird play that they've written, which is like Romeo and Juliet, the Prisoner of
Azkaban, and then some other random nonsense.
Prisoner of Azkaban, The Return of the King. It's mishmashing a whole bunch of stuff together. Mostly Monoma just bragging about how awesome it's going to be and how 1A is going to be humiliated and being a typical jerk, and then he gets clobbered in the head. And they have to apologize. It's like, sorry, Kendo's not here to keep him in check. She's
getting ready for the
beauty pageant.
That's right.
And the Jirei was going to be is going for it and trying to. She was runner-up last time. It's because there's some beauty queen that's like the queen of the beauty pageants. And I just looked at the still image they showed of her. I'm like, how did that win number 1?
What is that thing?
Yeah, I'm just like, it was like, she looked like frickin' Yzma from Emperor's New Groove. It's just like, she just looked like, I was like, oh god, why? Anyway, but good, another set of episodes. We've got 2 more binges left, and what we have available in dubbed. We've got the last 5 episodes of season 4. We've got the 2 OVAs, which will be a separate binge. And then we can get to movie number 2.
Yep.
Which was Heroes Rising, I believe.
Yep.
Is that the next one? Yeah, okay. But yeah, still enjoying this, still liking the gradual world building that they give us with all this.
And the character growth and development.
Exactly. It's something that I really do appreciate, because I'm a sucker for good world building. And how they choose to drip feed the elements of it. Something I hope to do in my own writing when I get around to writing and finishing the story I've been working on since December. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Well, I was doing a bunch of stuff for a world building challenge writing thing, or a world building challenge in general. Got a bunch of ideas. Now I've just got to take those ideas and write a story with them. But hey, that's not what this podcast is for. I'm just saying, I'm looking at stuff like this as inspiration for how to approach world building. And
I'm glad I was able to get you into it.
Yeah, well, it's one of the, like I said, way back when we started doing this, I've been meaning to try to get into it. I just never did, but now I finally have an excuse to do so.
There you go.
But so, hey, that'll wrap up this edition of the Bingecast. So, unless you have anything else to add?
After that, you get ready for some One Punch.
One Punch, that's right. Do some more superhero stuff.
Hell yeah. I never get burnt out. I know a lot of my friends and other people I know. Oh, I'm so over superheroes this and superheroes. I'm like, you know what? That's fine.
I love superhero stuff. It is very interesting. There's a lot out there that I haven't delved into, but I love to see how different approaches to the superhero stuff. MCU, of course, is held up there as one of the gold standards, or at least in terms of how successful it is. It's not entirely, not without its flaws here and there, but they have done a good job in keeping people engaged with it, like we've been seeing with WandaVision. Keeping people guessing about what's going on and everything. And of course, DC has their own approach to it. And then there's
we'll be getting to that.
And then we've got the Arrowverse, all the Arrowverse stuff, and then you've got.
I can understand that you can have be weighed down by too much of it, but it's just how much you intake.
Right. Just because it's there doesn't mean you have to consume it right away. Sort of.
I could like we're watching now with My Hero. I could watch My Hero over and over again. I've already watched One Punch Man season 1 and 2 twice this year.
Well, in 2021 or over the last 12 months?
Over the last couple months.
Okay. Well, hey, there you go. I'd be probably trying to dive into more stuff if I could get streaming options to work at work, but limitations of the network settings prevent me from making use of a lot of streaming sites. And even the streaming sites that do work, like YouTube, I can't watch movies or TV shows on there because there's a different like protocol or something that doesn't work.
Weird.
It used to, and now it doesn't. Really, really frustrates me. But hey, that's me. But hey, I can still keep those on the list for doing an eventual Bingecast for. Yep. That'll wrap it up. So for Sam, I'm Jay, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Bored to Death Bingecast. Be sure to check out our library of past podcasts via CKCC Radio or via our YouTube channel, and give us a like and subscribe. We'll see you after our next binge.